I almost didn't show up. That's the part my buddies would roast me about the hardest, because they know exactly who I am. They know I'd rather spend a Sunday afternoon refinishing a bookshelf in my garage than sit across from some stranger and fake my way through small talk. They call me the hermit, like it's a running joke, like I'm secretly miserable about it. The truth is, I've always preferred silence. The kind that smells like sawdust and varnish. The kind that gives you room to think. But when my phone lit up Friday evening and my buddy Travis texted, "Blind date. Sunday, 3 p.m. Birch and brew by the reservoir," I knew I was screwed. Not because I wanted to go, because they wanted me to go. My friends have this annoying habit of treating my single life like a team project. Like if they just keep nudging hard enough, they'll shove me into some romance and then pat themselves on the back for it. They've pulled this kind of thing before. One time, they signed me up for a mixer at a brewery downtown, and I ended up trapped with a woman who spent 20 minutes telling me about her emotional support ferret like it was her soulmate. I can still hear Travis howling with laughter when I told him about it. So when he followed up with, "Trust me, bro, you'll thank us," I just stared at the message and shook my head. "Fine," I typed back. "But if this is another ferret situation, you're covering my tab for a month." Travis hit me back with a string of crying laughing emojis and a promise that felt suspiciously thin. Sunday rolled around too quick. I was out in my garage workshop, halfway through sanding down an oak side table. Sawdust stuck to my forearms. The whole space smelled like wood stain and turpentine. Boomer, my rescue mutt, half lab, half question mark, was sprawled across the concrete floor like he was paying mortgage. He picked his head up when I stood, tail thumping once against the ground, then dropped it again like he already knew I was about to do something stupid. My place sits just outside Asheville, North Carolina, backed up against a ridge thick with hemlocks and white oaks. It's a small A-frame, drafty in the winter, hot in the summer, but it's mine. Most evenings I sit out on the deck with a cold one and listen to the creek running behind the tree line. No drama, no noise, just the life I pieced together with my own two hands. That's why a blind date felt like a trap waiting to spring. I checked the clock, 2:15. I could still bail. Tell Travis my truck battery died. Pretend I forgot. Nobody would even blink. But something stubborn in me didn't want to hand my friends the satisfaction of calling me chicken. So I scrubbed the grime off my hands, pulled on a clean pair of Wranglers, a denim shirt with the sleeves rolled, and my worn-out Red Wings. I didn't try too hard. Trying too hard is how you lose before you start. Boomer trailed me to the front door, ears perked like he wanted in on the mission. "Not today, pal," I told him, giving his head a scratch. "Hold down the fort." He blinked slow, like he wasn't buying it, then flopped back down on the rug. The drive to Birch and Brew took about 20 minutes. The closer I got, the more the whole thing felt like a setup. I half expected Travis's Bronco to be sitting in the lot with a phone camera propped on the dash and some dumb banner. But when I pulled in, it was just a regular Sunday afternoon. Family strolling along the reservoir path, a couple sharing a bench, some guy running with a blue heeler. No Travis, no ambush. Birch and Brew had that mountain town charm. Exposed timber, big plate glass windows looking out over the water. The reservoir was flat as a mirror, catching the pale afternoon sky. Inside, it smelled like fresh roasted coffee and brown sugar. The kind of place where people camp out with MacBooks and pretend they're working on screenplays. I ordered a black coffee, no frills, and grabbed a two-top by the window. 3 o'clock came, then 3:05, then 3:10. I sipped my coffee, glancing at my phone like it owed me an explanation. No texts, no updates. Classic. My friends were probably cracking up somewhere, letting me sit here alone like the butt of their joke. By 3:15, I'd made up my mind. I was done. I grabbed my mug, pushed back my chair, and that's when the door swung open with a little chime. I looked up, bracing for Travis or one of my buddies to come strolling in with a grin. Instead, I saw her. She stepped inside like she already belonged. No nerves showing, no performance. Her presence made the room feel quieter somehow, even though nothing around us actually changed. She was maybe late 30s, with dark auburn hair pulled into a loose twist, a few strands falling soft around her jawline. She wore a long olive green dress that swayed when she walked and a cream-colored knit cardigan that looked like it had been lived in. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't trying to be noticed. She was steady in a way that made something in my chest pull tight. She scanned the room, and when her eyes found me, they didn't slide past. They held. Then she walked straight to my table. My first thought, wrong guy? My second thought, if she figured that out, I hoped it wouldn't be too soon. She stopped in front of me, her smile easy but warm, the kind of smile that looked like it had never been weaponized. Cole, she said. My heart did something it hadn't done in years. It stumbled. Yeah, I said, standing too fast. My knee caught the table edge, and my coffee rocked near the rim. Smooth start. That's me. She laughed. Not mean, just genuinely amused, like she'd already decided I was human, and that was perfectly okay. Nora, she said, offering her hand. Her fingers were warm when I took them. The handshake was brief, but the feeling of it stayed on my skin after she pulled away. She sat down across from me like it was the most natural thing in the world. I blinked, still catching up, and glanced past her shoulder expecting my buddies to jump out from behind a potted fern. Nobody did. Nora leaned back, studying me with a look that was half curious, half entertained. I'm guessing we're both victims of the same scheme, she said. That made me exhale for the first time since I walked in. I let out a short laugh and nodded. Yeah, I said. My buddy Travis thinks he's a comedian. Told me I'd thank him later. Nora's smile grew wider. My friend Jen said the exact same thing, she replied. Told me to show up and meet a guy named Cole. Said I needed to get out of the house. I shook my head. Disbelief tangled up with something else I wasn't ready to name. So you figured it was a prank too? I said. 100%, Nora answered. But I thought, worst case I kill an hour. Best case I walk away with a decent story. I couldn't stop looking at her. Not in some creepy way, in a what the hell is happening to me way. She wasn't what I'd call my type, if I even had one. She wasn't some gym selfie girl or someone with big energy and a curated Instagram. She was real, soft, grounded, and she was beautiful in a way that didn't ask for anyone's approval. Nora tilted her head, catching me staring. Not what you expected? She asked, voice teasing. Heat crawled up my neck. Not even a little, I admitted, rubbing the back of my head. I figured my friends would match me with someone who wanted to talk about exotic pets. Nora laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that made you want to earn it again. No exotic pets, she promised. Just coffee and questionable life choices. I surprised myself by grinning back. I settled into my chair again, hands suddenly unsure where to go. Through the window, the reservoir sparkled under the afternoon light. Inside, the air was warm and sweet with cinnamon. And across from me, Nora looked at me like she actually wanted to be sitting right there. So, Cole, she said, folding her hands on the table. Tell me, how'd you get dragged into this? I leaned forward without thinking, elbows on the table. For the first time all day, I wasn't thinking about Travis. I wasn't thinking about my workshop. I wasn't thinking about leaving. I was just looking at Nora, feeling something start to tug at me, and wondering if my friends had accidentally pulled off the one thing they never actually intended, setting me up with someone who might change everything. I told Nora the truth. The unfiltered version, not the polished first date edit. I told her my friends couldn't stand watching me be alone because it made them antsy, like my quiet life was some kind of red flag. I said they figured if they kept tossing women in my direction, sooner or later one would stick. I said I was burnout on dating apps, hollow conversations, and pretending I gave a damn about somebody's dream vacation bucket list. Nora listened like she was filing everything away, not to judge, but to understand. When I finished, she raised her coffee cup and took a slow sip, her eyes still locked on mine. That sounds exhausting, she said. No wonder you live in the woods with a dog. I laughed, a short, surprised bark. Boomer's better company than 90% of people, I admitted. I believe it, Nora said, and her voice was warm, not mocking, just agreeing with me. She told me about her friend Jen, how Jen had been on her case for months to start dating again. Nora said she'd been married once. It ended a few years back. Not some blowout, not messy, just two people who slowly stopped choosing each other. She said she'd moved back near Asheville to be closer to her dad, who didn't need a caretaker exactly, but needed someone nearby, someone to haul in the groceries, drive him to the VA, sit with him on the porch when the house got too empty. She said it all matter-of-factly, like she didn't want pity. That earned my respect instantly. We kept talking, and time did something strange. It didn't vanish, it just stopped mattering. The cafe filled up around us. A couple of college kids claimed a table behind Nora and whispered back and forth like they were in the middle of a breakup. A barista called out names. Somebody dropped a fork. Laughter drifted from the register. But Nora and I stayed in our own little bubble. I told her about my work, the freelance carpentry gigs I pick up around the county. Decks, porches, fences, furniture restores. I told her about the small wooden animals I whittle when my head gets too noisy. Bears, foxes, hawks, things I can hold in my palm and feel proud of. She leaned in when I talked, like she was picturing every detail. You build things that last, she said. That's rare. It's just wood, I answered, but my voice came out softer than I intended. Nora shook her head. It's not just wood, Cole. It's you taking something raw and shaping it into something solid. I didn't know how to handle that. So I looked out the window at the water and pretended I wasn't rattled. But my chest felt warm. At some point, she asked about Boomer again. I pulled up a photo on my phone, him sitting on my deck with a stick clamped in his jaw, looking like he was personally responsible for guarding the entire ridge. Nora laughed and covered her mouth with her hand. He looks like he evaluates strangers, she said. He does, I said, but he's got a good heart underneath it. Nora's eyes softened in a way that tightened my throat. I like dogs that have been through stuff, she said quietly. That sentence hung between us for a beat, heavy in a way neither of us tried to explain. I didn't push. She didn't either. Then she caught me off guard. Why did you really show up? She asked. I blinked. What do you mean? Nora held my gaze like she wasn't going to let me sidestep. You could have bailed, she said. Most guys would, especially if they thought the whole thing was a joke. But you came anyway. What? I looked at her, searching for a slick answer. There wasn't one, so I gave her the honest one. Because I was tired of being the guy who always walks away, I said. And because part of me was curious. Curious about what? Curious whether my life could look different. Nora didn't smile right away. She just looked at me like she understood exactly what I meant. Then she gave one slow nod. That's a good reason, she said. We talked until the sun shifted and turned the reservoir into a sheet of gold. The light through the window softened and made Nora's face look even calmer, even more unreal. When I realized how late it had gotten, I felt that old familiar impulse. Shut it down before it gets too real. My brain does that. Pulls the emergency brake. End it while it's still safe. Leave before someone can leave you first. Nora glanced at her watch and let out a small laugh. We've been here a while, she said. Yeah, I answered. My voice sounded rough. Didn't mean to keep you. You didn't keep me, she said. I stayed. That single sentence landed harder than it had any right to. The baristas started wiping down tables. The overhead lights dimmed a notch. The crowd thinned. Nora stood and slung her bag over her shoulder. Your friends are going to want the full debriefing, she said, smiling. I stood too, scratching the back of my neck. They'll probably throw a parade, I said. Like they just solved my whole life. Nora's smile turned playful. Did they? I opened my mouth, then closed it, because the answer was no, but also maybe. We walked out together into cooler air, the smell of lake water and evergreen mixing in the breeze. The sky was pale blue streaked with orange along the ridgeline. Nora stopped beside her car, a beat-up Outback that looked like it had lived a real life. It didn't match her dress, and somehow that made me like her more. She turned to face me, eyes steady. Thanks for not bolting when I walked in, she said. I swallowed. Thanks for walking in, I replied. Her smile softened, and for a second I thought she might step closer. Instead, she just nodded, like she was saving something for later. I had a really good time, Cole, she said. Me too, I said. And I mean that. She opened her car door, then looked back at me. If your friends ask, tell them it wasn't a joke, she said. Tell them it was just coffee. Then she got in and drove away, her taillights fading down the road that curved around the reservoir. I stood there longer than I should have, hands jammed in my pockets, cold air biting my face. It took a solid minute before it hit me. My phone was still in my hand. I still didn't have her number. And for the first time in years, that actually bothered me. When I got back to my place, Boomer met me at the door like he'd been waiting for his own debrief. He jumped up, paws against my chest, then dropped and trotted circles around me like he could smell something different. I dropped onto my couch, still wearing my boots, staring at the wall. I kept replaying Nora's voice, her laugh, the way she said, I stayed. My phone buzzed. Travis. So, Hermit, he texted. Scale of 1 to 10, how bad was it? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I typed the only thing that felt true. It wasn't a joke. A second later. That's not an answer. Details. I didn't answer. Because I didn't have details. All I had was the feeling that something had started, and if I wasn't careful, I'd wreck it before it ever had the chance to become real. That scared me more than any prank ever could. Monday and Tuesday dragged like they had weights on them. I tried to act like that coffee date hadn't gotten under my skin, but it had. I kept thinking about Nora's steady voice, the way she looked at me like she wasn't trying to win anything, just trying to see me. I'd be in my shop measuring a board, and suddenly her laugh would play in my head. I'd be tossing a tennis ball for Boomer and catch myself wondering what Nora was doing at that exact moment. Worst part, I still didn't have her number. I thought about hitting up Travis for it, but the idea turned my stomach. I didn't want my friends in the middle of this. If I was going to reach out, it had to come from me, not Travis, not some group chat joke, not a screenshot of my text with a row of laughing emojis underneath. So I did nothing, which is basically my superpower. I kept sanding. I kept my world quiet. I kept telling myself it was just one solid conversation and I should let it go. Then, 2 days later, my phone buzzed while I was brushing sawdust off a farmhouse table I'd been building for a client. Unknown number. For a second I figured spam. Almost swiped it away. Something made me open it. Thanks for the surprise coffee date. The message read, if you want to hear another story about a barn cat that terrorizes the neighbors, I'm free Thursday evening. I stared at the screen like it might evaporate if I blinked. My chest did a weird flip, half relief, half panic. Boomer raised his head like he sensed a shift in the room. It was Nora. I laughed out loud, one sharp sound, and Boomer scrambled up and trotted over like he wanted in on whatever was happening. I typed back with hands that suddenly felt way too big for my phone. Only if you promise to leave the barn cats at home. Thursday works. Her reply came fast. Name the spot. I read it twice. She wasn't playing games. She wasn't making me chase. She was just there, open, direct. It made me want to be the same. Reservoir Trail, I typed. 6 p.m. Bring layers. It gets chilly by the water. Another quick reply. Bring Boomer. I want to meet the famous guard dog. I stared at that message and smiled so hard my face hurt. Thursday came too fast. I burned through the day pretending I wasn't keyed up. I worked a porch railing job out past Weaverville, drove nails like I was getting paid by the strike, and checked the clock way too many times. When I got home I showered, pulled on a clean flannel, and ran a comb through my hair like that was going to make any difference. Boomer sat by the door with his leash already in his mouth, tail going like a metronome. All right, bud, I told him. Don't make me look bad. He blinked, then sneezed. Felt like an answer. The reservoir trail was quiet when we got there, lined with hemlocks and benches, the water catching the last of the daylight. A few people passed with dogs. A couple walked hand in hand like the rest of the world could wait. I spotted Nora on a bench, a thermos between her hands. Her hair was down this time, falling in loose waves past her shoulders. She wore a soft gray pullover and jeans. No dress, no cardigan. Just her, comfortable. Real. When she looked up and saw me, her smile hit me like stepping into sunlight. Then Boomer decided he was in love. He lunged on the leash and bounded toward her like she was a long-lost friend. Nora laughed and crouched down, letting him sniff her hands before scratching behind his ears. Boomer melted, literally melted, like he'd spent his whole life waiting for exactly that touch. Wow, she said, still grinning. You were not exaggerating. He is a charmer. Gets it from me, I said, aiming for casual even though my pulse was hammering. Nora raised an eyebrow. We'll see about that, she shot back. We started down the trail, Boomer trotting between us like he was the proudest dog in western North Carolina. The air smelled like pine needles and lake water. The sky was pale gold near the ridgeline, and the gravel crunched under our shoes. We kept things light at first. Nora told me her dad had been in a mood all week, grumbling about the HOA and the volume on his hearing aids. I told her Boomer once swiped an entire pulled pork sandwich off my counter and inhaled it so fast I didn't notice until I saw the empty plate. Nora shook her head, laughing. You live with a criminal, she said. Yeah, I said, but he's cute, so he gets a pass. She looked at me like she was about to add something. Then she didn't. She just smiled and kept walking. That was the thing about Nora. She didn't rush to fill silence. She let moments breathe. We stopped where the trail opened up near the water's edge. The reservoir was calm, its surface catching the last gold of the sun. Nora held out her thermos. Brought tea, she said. Chamomile. Helps when the air gets sharp. I took a sip, surprised by how warm it was, How thoughtful the gesture felt. Thanks, I said. You didn't have to. Wanted to, she answered. Simple as that. We walked on, and somewhere along the way the conversation shifted. Not heavy like a sudden downpour. Real, like the sky dimming slowly toward dusk. Nora asked about my place, and I told her how I'd ended up in it after walking away from community college. How I liked the quiet because it never asked me to explain myself. How trees don't need a reason for you to be standing among them. She listened, eyes steady. Then she said, I get that. I looked at her. She kept her gaze on the water. After the divorce, she said, I thought being alone would feel peaceful. And sometimes it does. But other times it's like sitting in a room where somebody turned the volume all the way down. You're fine, but you're also kind of fading. Her words landed somewhere deep. Because I knew that exact feeling. I didn't have the right words. So I said the true ones. You're not fading, I said. Not to me. Nora glanced over, and for a second her expression softened like she wasn't used to hearing something like that. We kept seeing each other after that. Not every day, not in some frantic rush, just often enough that it started to feel like part of the rhythm. A dinner at my place where I grilled ribeyes on the deck and Nora showed up with a bottle of Zinfandel that made me feel like I should have swapped my mismatched plates for something decent. She didn't care. She sat at my little table, laughed when Boomer parked himself at her feet begging, and told me I had a good home, even if the screen door didn't close all the way. An evening in town where we wandered into a paint-and-sip studio and messed around on tiny canvases. Mine looked like a smudged hillside. Hers looked like the reservoir at sunset. She teased me. I teased her back. And for once, I didn't feel like I was putting on an act. I just felt present. She started saying my full name when I amused her. Cole, she'd say, shaking her head like she couldn't quite believe I was real. And I started noticing how badly I wanted to keep hearing it. Then the grocery store happened. Saturday afternoon. We were standing in the bread aisle debating sourdough versus whole wheat. Nora was actually smiling, truly smiling, like for once she wasn't hauling around the weight of everything. Then the smile dropped. Her whole body went still. Her hand was on my arm, and I felt her fingers clamp down like she was steadying herself against something. I followed her eyes. A man stood at the far end of the aisle. Early 40s, sharp haircut, expensive-looking Patagonia vest. The kind of guy who looked like he had a plan for everything. He was holding hands with a younger woman, maybe mid-20s, high ponytail, lip gloss, laughing like the world was hers. The man looked up, eyes locking on Nora. The laughter fell off his face. Nora, he said, voice flat. Nora didn't step back, didn't flinch. She lifted her chin like she was bracing against a wind she'd weathered before. Greg, she said. I didn't need introductions. Her ex-husband. Greg's eyes flicked to me, then down to Nora's hand on my arm. A slow, ugly smirk spread across his mouth. So, he drawled, this is your new situation. The way he said it made my jaw clench, like she was a phase, like I was a punchline. The younger woman beside him shifted, smile fading as she picked up on the tension. Nora didn't waver. This is Cole, she said, voice calm but edged. And he's someone who actually makes me feel like I matter. My chest went tight. Greg's smirk flickered. He let out a small, hollow laugh. Good for you, he said. Didn't figure you for the blue-collar type. His eyes grazed my denim shirt like it was beneath him. I took a quiet half-step forward. Nothing aggressive, just making myself known. Nora squeezed my arm once, and I read it clearly. I can handle this, but I'm glad you're here. Greg's eyes narrowed. Anyway, he said, already pivoting away like he wanted the exit line without earning it. Hope that works out for you. Nora didn't watch him go. She looked at me instead. Her gaze was steady, but something was trembling underneath. You okay? I asked low. She nodded, but it didn't convince me. Let's go, she said. We left the store with half a cart of groceries and all of that tension riding shotgun. She stared out the window most of the drive, hands folded tight in her lap. I wanted to say something, but I didn't want it to be the wrong thing. When we pulled up to my place, Nora didn't move to get out. She just sat there, eyes on the hemlocks, like she was waiting for the trees to tell her something. Finally she spoke. He used to make me feel invisible. My throat clenched. He doesn't get to do that anymore, I said. Nora swallowed, eyes glassy but fierce. Sometimes it still feels like he can, she admitted. Seeing him it drags it all back. I reached over and took her hand. Not here, I said. Not with me. She squeezed so hard it almost hurt. I didn't mind at all. That night, after she'd gone home, the sky went dark and wind rattled through the trees outside like a low warning. I was on my couch, Boomer at my feet, when my phone buzzed. Nora, mind if I come by tomorrow evening? I don't want to be alone. I stared at the screen, pulse thudding, because I could feel it. Whatever this was, it was about to cross a line into something deeper. And I knew that if she walked through my door after dark, I wouldn't want her to leave. I didn't hesitate. Come over, I typed. Doors open. Boomer will act like you've always lived here. She replied with a single word. Thanks. And somehow that one word made my chest ache. The next day crawled. I tried to focus on a deck-staining job, but my mind kept skipping forward to the sound of Nora's tires on my gravel drive. I kept seeing her face in that grocery aisle, composed on the surface, rattled underneath. I kept hearing her words. He used to make me feel invisible. By evening, the sky over the ridge turned slate gray. A cold rain started, gentle at first, then steady, drumming on the tin roof like a quiet heartbeat. Boomer paced by the front door, ears twitching at every sound. Then I heard it, tires crunching gravel. I opened the door before she could knock. Nora stood on my porch, umbrella dripping, hair damp at the ends, cheeks flushed pink from the chill. She wore a forest green sweater and jeans, simple, familiar, like she fit inside my house more than she probably knew. Her eyes looked tired, but when they met mine there was quiet relief in them. Sorry to show up like this, she said. You're not showing up? I told her, stepping aside. You're coming home. She exhaled, long and slow, like she'd been holding it in all day. Boomer walked straight to her, sniffed her boots, then pressed his broad head against her thigh like he'd made his decision. Nora laughed softly and crouched to scratch behind his ears. He's loyal, she murmured. He knows good people, I said. I took her jacket and hung it by the door. The house felt warmer with her in it, not because of the wood stove, but because the space itself seemed to remember it could be more than just quiet. I made tea, the chamomile she liked. We settled on the couch with a blanket across our legs, rain tapping the windows. Boomer curled at Nora's feet like a sentry. For a while, we didn't talk. Not in an awkward way, in the kind of way where words aren't the point. Then Nora looked into her mug and said, It's not just seeing Greg. I waited. I didn't push. I just stayed still. She swallowed. It's everything, she continued. The marriage. The way I kept making myself smaller to keep the peace. The way I convinced myself that silence was the same thing as being happy. After the divorce, I told myself I was finished trying, finished hoping. She glanced at me, eyes glassy but resolute. Then you showed up, Cole. My throat went tight. I didn't speak, because I knew if I rushed it, I'd ruin the moment. Nora leaned back into the couch, fingers curled around her mug like it was keeping her anchored. I haven't felt safe like this in a long time, she said. Safe enough to actually want something again. And that terrifies me. I shifted toward her, my shoulder brushing hers. What terrifies you exactly? I asked quietly. Wanting it, or losing it? Nora's breath hitched. Both, she admitted. I'm older than you. I've got a dad who counts on me. I've got a past that keeps trying to pull me backward. I don't want to be a weight on your life. Something sharp twisted in my chest, like the very idea offended me. You're not a weight, I said. Nora, you're the first person who's made my life feel full in I don't know how long. Her eyes held mine. And if you wake up one day and decide you want someone younger, she whispered. Someone with less baggage. I reached out and brushed her cheek with my thumb. You're not baggage, I said. You're real. And I don't want easy. I want you. Her lips parted like she hadn't expected that. She stared at me for a long moment, like she was deciding whether she was allowed to believe it. Then she set her mug down, and I saw the small tremble in her hands. I don't want to keep doing life alone, she said. Something inside me clicked into place, solid, certain. Neither do I said. I leaned in. Slow. No rush, no grab, just closing the distance inch by inch, asking permission with every one of them. Nora met me halfway. Her lips were warm, soft, tasting faintly of chamomile. The kiss wasn't desperate. It was steady, two people finally releasing the last scrap of fear that had been holding them back. When we pulled apart, her forehead rested against mine. Cole, she whispered, voice unsteady. This feels too good to be real. I kept my hand on her cheek. It is real, I said. And I'm not going anywhere. Nora's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She just nodded once, like she was letting those words settle into her bones. She stayed that night. Not in some reckless, movie montage way. She stayed in the way that mattered. We talked until the rain tapered off and the house went quiet. She told me about her dad, how he used to two-step around the kitchen to Merle Haggard on Saturday mornings. I told her about the first table I ever built, how it wobbled so bad I had to jam a folded napkin under one leg to keep it from rocking. Nora laughed so hard she clamped a hand over her mouth, and Boomer lifted his head and stared at us like we'd both lost our minds. At some point, Nora fell asleep on my couch, her head on my shoulder, her hand still in mine. I didn't move. I just sat there, listening to the rain die away, thinking about how unpredictable life was. 2 weeks ago, I thought I was walking into a prank. Now I was sitting in my house with a woman who made me want to be better and a dog who'd already decided she was family. The next morning, the air outside was clean and sharp. The hemlocks dripped from last night's rain. Sunlight broke through the clouds and made the whole ridge glow. Nora woke slowly, blinking like she'd forgotten where she was for half a beat. Then she looked at me and smiled, small, almost shy. "Morning," she said. "Morning," I replied. Boomer launched himself onto the couch between us and shoved his face into her hands like he was filing a formal request for attention. Nora laughed, rubbing his ears. "He's going to be impossible," she said. "He already is," I told her. We made breakfast together. Nothing fancy, just scrambled eggs and toast. Nora stood in my small kitchen in her socks, hair a mess, humming something under her breath. The house felt different, softer, lived in. After we ate, she stared out the window at the trees. "I should go check on my dad," she said, voice gentle. "But I don't want this to be a one-time thing, Cole." "It won't be," I said. She turned to me, searching my face. "Promise." I stepped closer and took her hands. "I don't make promises I can't keep," I said. "But I can tell you this. I want you in my life. Not as a secret, not as something temporary. I want to build something with you. Slow, steady, real." Nora's eyes went soft, and she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. Slow and steady. When she left, she didn't rush. She stood on my deck for a moment, sunlight catching her hair. She kissed me once, quick but sure, then walked to her outback. I watched her roll down the gravel drive until the trees swallowed her up. My phone buzzed a minute later. "Travis. So, was it a joke?" I looked around my house. Nora's mug sat in my sink. Her cardigan was still hanging by the door because she'd forgotten it. Boomer was posted at the window, watching the road like he expected her back any minute. I typed my reply. "No, it wasn't a joke. It was the best thing you've ever done for me." Then I set my phone down and smiled to myself, because the truth was even bigger than that. My friends thought they were setting me up for a laugh, but they accidentally set me up for a life.